introduce our guest for today. Most of us will know Cara very well. Cara has been hosting our Recovering from Religion RfRx presentations now for a long time and has been an integral member of the RfR community, helping so many people. Many people might not know a lot about Cara's life. So Dr. Cara Griffin was raised a fundamentalist Christian, receiving intensive instruction and indoctrination from sources including private church schools and homeschool groups. There was one called the Bill Gothard's Institute in Basic Life Principles. That sounds interesting. Cara was raised with the purity culture youth seminars and evangelical mega churches. After leaving the faith in college, Cara began pursuing their lifelong passion for learning and appreciating, rather than condemning, how good, the diversity of humans and other animals. They hold a master's degree in dispute resolution and conflict management and a PhD in anthropology. Cara enjoys volunteering with many secular organizations that support other people. And these are people who might have experienced the judgment, the repression, and the oppression that comes from a religious background, or the trauma associated with struggles imposed by a religious community and mindset. At RfR, Cara serves as the online programming director and, as we mentioned, hosts our RfRx presentations. So thank you, Cara, for being here today in the capacity of Dr. Cara Griffin to present us with this excellent talk. We're looking forward to you. Can you tell us a little bit about your presentation and what we hope to discuss today?
Absolutely. Thank you for that kind introduction. I am so glad to be here. I mean, I'm here every week, but glad to be here speaking too and hanging out with you other fine people. And yes, I actually was thinking of this presentation topic while we were at the fall excursion 2 weekends ago, when our fantastic executive director, Gail Jordan, gave a lovely talk about creating new traditions, in which she noted that being secular doesn't necessarily mean that we can't enjoy our holiday traditions. And that includes seasonal holidays that we might have grown up with, like Halloween, and maybe even our own new traditions like the RfR Excursion. And so that got me thinking about some of the ways that being an evangelical Christian actually made it more difficult to enjoy some things like Halloween because of the fear of demons and evil spirits that stayed with me for a long time. So that was how I got to thinking about this topic for this evening. But before we jump into it, I think that we might want to hear from a few people about their experiences at the fall excursion. Dr. Ray, were you going to make a few comments about that?
Oh, I wasn't going to make any. I was going to listen to everybody else's, but since you put me on the spot, I had a lot of fun. It was really interesting to get to know a whole lot of new people and get naked in the hot tub. That was interesting, and hear all the great talks that we had, and had lots of good wine and tons of good food. So that's I'll leave it at that.
Fair enough. Thank you. Yeah, I did kind of put you on the spot there. Well, I think we have a few other people here who were at the excursion that might want to say a few things. Glinda, are you still here? Would you like to chime in?
I am still here. Yeah, it was a profound experience. You know, the location is so beautiful. We got to experience like a thunderstorm rolling in, and we were so high up that it felt like we were in the clouds, and the community and camaraderie that folks just really very desperately like needed. And I had the honor and joy and pleasure and anxiety, excitement of setting up the reception, which I think went off really well. And I had this whole harvest table and thanks to all of my volunteers of all the cheese slicers and bread cutters and package openers, and I handed, I don't know, 6 or 7 jars to David Klingy to open because I couldn't get them open. But it was really, truly a wonderful, wonderful trip, and I cannot wait for next year. And I hope to see so many of the faces that I see here. I hope y'all can make it next year. Please consider applying. And we're going to be in the same location, and it's going to be even better. So I can't wait. Thanks so much for like having me there as a volunteer. It's just a joy.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, that was pretty much the best cheese spread that I've ever seen in my life. So if you want to experience that decadent goodness, come to the Excursion next year. Okay, we also have Jason, I believe, here. Jason, did you want to make a few comments?
Yeah, sure. It was a great weekend. I think Glenda said it right, that it was kind of profound. It was great to meet all these people that I just interacted with virtually. It kind of made everything more real, which was incredible, and like a vacation I kind of needed after many years. And I couldn't recommend it enough. I'm looking forward to going next year and making even more of it.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, it was really fantastic getting to meet people in person that we've only been able to interact with online or on Zoom. That was probably my favorite part of it too. So yeah, I highly recommend it as well. I am looking forward to making it part of one of my fall traditions every year, hopefully.
Who were the special guests this year, Cara?
Oh man. Yeah, we had a whole slew of guest speakers, including, I mentioned Gail Jordan spoke. We also had Danny Boylan. We had, let me see here, Mandisa Thomas was there doing the karaoke. We had David Teachout talking about using values to expand conversations. Candace Gorham was there talking about secular grief. We had Thomas Westbrook from Holy Kool-Aid talking about the fear of hell.
Holy
Kool-Aid, which was really cool. And he also has a really good video related to demons too that I might mention later. And then we had Erin Lewis, who was so cool. I came home with some of her books, Discovering Healthy Body Image and Sexuality. We had Debbie Allen, we had Gwen Blodgett, we had Travis McKee Vorst. I think I always say his name wrong. And of course we had Darrel Ray. That was just a few. Actually, I think that was all of our speakers.
And the karaoke was awesome this year. Of course, it always is, but
yes. Darrel kind of came out and showed everybody up with his amazing angelic almost singing voice.
I just thought everybody had a good time with karaoke.
Of course, who doesn't have a good time at karaoke? I had a good time not singing at karaoke, and I think everyone else had a good time because of that too. So y'all are welcome. Maybe next year. Yeah,
well, it sounds like it was an amazing weekend, and thanks to all those that put so much hard work in behind the scenes to make it all happen and to make it a success. That's huge appreciation to everybody, and stay tuned for next year, everyone. Please keep a look at our website and feel free to join us.
Yes, please do. And let's see, I think that was everybody. Was there anybody else that was going to comment that was there? I think we covered it, but if you are in the audience and you were there too, feel free to drop some comments in the chat too about your experience and keep the conversation going.
So people are mentioning that the movie theater was fun. What movies were shown?
Ooh, yes, we saw Glenda in charge of our movies this year, and we saw The Birds and Birdcage. Yeah, we had a bird theme this year for our movies. Maybe we'll do Bird Box next year. I don't know. But it was a lot of fun.
It was actually genuinely, like, the movie thing was one of the most fun. I didn't expect it to be so fun, but it was so much fun. And yeah, we watched The Birds, with the old Hitchcock film with Tippi Hedren, and then The Birdcage, which is like one of my favorite movies of all time. And there was a pool and a hot tub. I baptized somebody who had never been baptized in the name of Lady Gaga, which was hilarious.
That was great.
I know there's obviously serious stuff at the Excursion, but then there's just play and joy and happiness the whole time. Lots of laughter.
We had a full chorus of the entire Father Abraham song. That was pretty amazing. I
don't know it, and I don't think I want to.
No, I will not sing that for you here. You're welcome.
Thank you.
But we had a pretty good time with that.
It's too. Also, it's a calisthenics. You don't just sing it. You have to like full body dance and sing, which is why Kara and I were
doing TikTok then. Okay.
Oh, you're right. Maybe that needs to go on the next RfR TikTok episode. I don't know.
Oh, sorry I mentioned it.
Yeah, everyone else will be too. No, like, we'll save that. You gotta come to the excursion in person to experience that. We'll go with that. But highly recommended. It was a really good time. So we will be looking forward to that next year. And I think it's already booked and the planning has already started for the next one. So keep your eyes peeled for updates on that and start planning now. Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you for running through that, because I know a lot of people from different parts of the world or parts of the States wanted to be there and couldn't. So thank you for making us feel part of it by sharing a bit of a rundown. That's really great.
Of course. Yeah. Well, thanks for letting us take some time to gush about it this evening. And I guess we better go ahead and get going on our actual show content tonight, which is about demons and spirits. And so, yeah, hopefully that's not too scary. I tell you what, I was scared to death of demons and evil spirits after I left my religion, even longer than I was afraid of hell. Now, informal poll question, I've just got to know, did anybody else here have to celebrate Neowalla instead of Halloween when you were a kid?
I have never heard of that.
No, enlighten us.
Is that an African thing?
No. It's unfortunately it's Halloween spelled backwards.
Oh,
Yeah. And some of the churches that I went to would make you celebrate that instead of Halloween, because Halloween, is celebrating Satan and evil spirits, and you don't want to open yourself up to the influence of those or possibly even become possessed. And
because there's one thing that demons can't do. They can't spell, right?
no,
Right,
and they can't read backwards.
Right.
Yeah, they never
can't
spell
put a mirror
things
up.
back.
Well, so that
Yeah.
proves I'm not a demon because I didn't catch that.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Right.
Or you're just fake.
But isn't the whole thing of like backwards music and whatever was supposed to be demonic?
Ooh,
So I'm
You
know,
confused.
that always got me too, because this was during the time, like when I was little, was during the time of the Satanic Panic, where people were worried about that exact thing and saying that, if you got certain rock and roll albums, and played them backwards, that there would be demonic themes.
So it
and
seems kind
messages
of like
coming.
hypocritical to try to hide the fact that it's Halloween by spelling it backwards then.
Yeah.
Now there you
like-
go, trying to make it make sense.
That's true. Slap, slap, slap.
Yeah, it's not allowed. We don't do that here.
We had
so-
someone else put a comment in the chat talking about how the churches would often set up trunk or treats out of the boots of cars instead of allowing
Trunk
kids to get
or-
around the neighborhood.
Oh, that wouldn't work in
Yes.
America because no one would know what you're talking about.
No, that's the American thing. Trunk
or treat?
out of the boot of the car or the back of the
Boot.
car.
Oh, you said the
have
boot.
all
Oh, is
the-
that called trunk or treat? Okay. instead
Trunk
of
or
stick
treat.
Or a treat.
Yeah.
Okay, other
Kari,
side.
did you have to do that in your community?
We did do that. Sometimes that would be a part of the Neowalla celebration, where you would go into the parking lot of the church and ask people for candy. And sometimes they would give you candy, and sometimes they would give you like tracts or,
Oh,
yeah.
chick tracts?
Yeah, we did have those at not that church that I'm thinking of, but one of the churches that I went to did have those right in the lobby, every one of them, and just to give out to everybody. So you could get those for Halloween. I'm sorry, Neowalla. You can't say Halloween. You might invite the spirits.
I don't know if you're going to talk about this, but somebody just put it in the chat and I was wondering about it too. And I never, frankly, had heard about this until I watched an episode of Young Sheldon, the prequel to The Big Bang Theory.
Mhm.
And they show the Hell House idea. That,
Yes.
it's a Christian thing to have a spooky haunted house, but to scare people about the devil and Satan. Did you ever experience that?
Yes. Oh my goodness, yes. Okay, at this church school that I went to from probably like preschool through middle school, we went to this really small church school at Pentecostal church. I think it was Assemblies of God, actually, but it was one of the more dramatic church styles, and they had a lot of spirit and demon possession belief, and they would do that every year at the church. They had this big program. They would set it up in the gymnasium area, and it was like supposed to be like a haunted house, but they're scaring you. They're scaring you just as bad as any other haunted house would. They're just scaring you that you're going to actually for real sin or get possessed and go to hell. And it would have things like, they would always have some reenactment of the crucifixion of Jesus, but then it would be other stuff like, someone having an abortion or, various sins and things that they would think of to scare people with. And then you're supposed to obviously come out and be terrified and then want to turn to Jesus at the end.
And instead of somebody dressed as a mummy and jumping out on you, I assume there were people dressed as demons and Satan.
It would be that kind of thing.
Oh
yeah.
my God, I'm
maybe
sorry. I'm not
priests.
trying to unmute myself another time and talk about it, but I just want to talk about they also so instead of any zombies or mummies or demons, it's only real life people. And it's a real life scenario. It's like a diorama that you walk through and you follow the path of, it's always two people because somebody gets to go to heaven and somebody gets to go to hell. And it involves the fire department and an ambulance. So there's usually a car out front that's mangled and they open a door and like beer cans fall out and there's a fire truck and lights and sirens and lights are going on. And then you go in and you go through the journey. But the hell room, they literally put space heaters in and made it like 115 degrees in the hell room and had actual real life human beings like screaming in there, and you were shoved in that room in the dark in the heat with somebody screaming.
Well, now I feel bad for the people who are the actors who had to stay in that room.
It's child abuse, and I just wanted to input. Sorry to interrupt again, Kara. I just wanted to input because I am passionate to give my opinion about hell houses and explaining to people what they are.
No, thank you for adding that. That is my opinion as well. It is absolutely child abuse. You're taking away like the fun, scary Halloween stuff and replacing it with something that is actually traumatizing your children. I'm not really sure who thought that was a good idea, but
and
yeah.
I wonder when it started. I've never looked into the history of this since I discovered it's like, do I not know about it because I'm so old that they didn't have it when I was a kid? Or is it that in my community, which was Catholic in New York City, it wasn't done, and it was being done elsewhere in the evangelical communities? I don't know.
That's a good question. I don't actually know when it started either. I remember it always being around when I was a kid, but we were in the very like evangelical Protestant circles all that time.
I didn't even know anybody of those faiths when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Everybody was
Lots of good
Catholic
people
or
like Seth Andrews have done presentations talking about how, of course, religion tries to mirror what's popular in pop culture. And of course, when Halloween celebrations became more popular, Christianity felt like they needed to do their adopted version of it or adapted version of that. He's done a few presentations on his channel that, along with trying to do Christian version of heavy metal, they've done Christian version of Halloween and try and get close enough to the line, but not overstep.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I love that one talk, might be one of the ones you're talking about, that Seth Andrews did, where he is also talking about, kind of lingering fear about demons and spirit possession. And I think he has that one where he actually is giving the talk and, publicly invites the demon to possess him, to show that nothing happened. But even watching that, I was like, ooh.
And he did a really good one. Yeah, he did a
Yeah.
really good one too, similarly about what happens to children when you're in that environment. And as Glenda and others have mentioned, it's child abuse to make kids feel so scared and to try and force them into a life of obedience to Jesus out of fear. So he did a whole presentation on just how toxic that is to a young developing child, which I'm sure you're going to get into.
This might be a softball question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So why do they do this, Cara?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it is exactly that. It's fear and control. It's fear-based control, in my opinion. And what I think is a little bit different about it than instilling the fear of hell into kids is that with demon possession and spirits, you can get hit with that immediately. You can sin and immediately the demon can get you. And so it's even more scary because you don't even have to wait until you die if you're believing in literal demon possession.
And is it just one? Is it just like one of the in Catholicism, I guess we call it the mortal sins? Is it breaking the 10 Commandments? Or is it like, doing anything that you think?
Great question. So it may have, other people's mileage may vary, but in the circles that I grew up in, for example, in the church school that I went to, you could get possessed for doing just about anything. Obviously, touching a Ouija board, you're going to get possessed.
Like sticking a wad of gum under the desk at school when you know you're not supposed to do that. Would that do it?
I don't know if that would do it. Usually it was things that like they felt like you were somehow getting in touch with or contacting or opening yourself up to evil. So like watching scary movies, you could get possessed if you watch The Exorcist, according to
I think sticking gum under tables is worse than watching scary movies because somebody's got to clean the freaking gum up.
Right. That actually
nobody gets hurt
people.
by you watching scary movies.
Yeah. I mean, listening to rock and roll music, you could get possessed. Yeah. And according to the Institute in Basic Life Principles that we went to, the Bill Gothard program, they even had a segment on, I remember one of the seminars that we went to where they were telling us about how one of the ways that we know demons are real and are in the rock music is they were describing a time when they got everyone together and got all of their evil rock and roll music albums and made a big bonfire to burn them. And as they were burning, you could hear the screams of the demons coming out of them. And so everyone was
admonished the plastic to go home warping.
And burn them. Yeah, could be either one. Obviously, the demons, most
50,
plausible.
50 shot.
Occam's razor clearly suggests it's demons.
Demons, yes.
Yeah. And when they...
What is Occam's razor, if people don't know what that expression is?
So basically, it's the idea that, and you might be able to say it more succinctly than I am, but that when you're trying to come up with an explanation for something, you should select the one that requires the fewest amount of leaps and assumptions to be made. So sometimes people say the simplest answer, but it's really, the one that requires you to make the fewest assumptions. So like in this case, if we were saying, well, is it the plastic warping or is it demons? We know plastic exists and that plastic warps when it's hot. We don't really know that demons exist. So jumping to that
nor that
conclusion,
they could scream if they do exist, right?
Right. So yeah, that requires
They're supposed to like leaps. I don't know why burning records would have demons come out. It's just, but anyway, that would make that presumption too, that they're in the plastic and they come out for some reason screaming when you burn them, but they're supposed to like fire. So why would they come out screaming?
Don't they live in hell anyway?
That's right.
Wouldn't they enjoy? It's like going in the hot tub or something.
Right.
So but you talk about the fear of possession and all of that sort of stuff and that judgment. And in our introductory bio, we mentioned that you deliberately broke away from an environment that looked to judge and condemn people at the slightest opportunity to do so. So was there more of an inclination to judge people as being possessed? Were there certain people who were targeted more by that?
Yes, I absolutely got that impression. I don't necessarily have the numbers for it, but it seemed to me that in a lot of the cases when we were learning about people being possessed, which of course we never actually saw a real person who was possessed by a demon, but we sure heard a lot of testimonials about it. And, they would even have people come in and talk to us about, the time they were possessed by a spirit. And every once in a while we would hear about, one of the ministers had done an exorcism and it was all very scary.
And those documentary movies,
the one on my shoulder there,
right. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, and it was great too, because, you weren't allowed to watch a movie like The Exorcist because you could get possessed from watching it. But then there would be adults that were telling you about it who had seen it, during their sinful phase or whatever. And, were able to still scare you with it, even though you weren't allowed to watch it. But where was I going? You asked me a question, Sasha.
So yeah, certain people being more sort of judged, and did that reflect maybe some bigotry or
I think so. I got that impression a lot of times. Well, not a lot of times, but sometimes we would have occasions where maybe missionaries would come back to the church or the school and come talk to us about their travels. And it would always be some story about, well, someone got a foreign object from one of these, quote unquote, backwards places that they went to visit. And of course, they brought back this little, knick-knack or a little carved, character or something, and they brought it home, and then that's how the demons got into their house, and then they had discord and strife, and the minister had to come and somehow figured out that the spirits were coming out of this foreign object that they had to get rid of, and somehow it would always end up being like the wife's fault.
Now, isn't that interesting, Cara? That goes back to medieval times where witches, who were predominantly women, were persecuted, tortured, and killed is it easier for them to cast judgment upon somebody that they might view as other or look down upon?
Yes, I really got that impression that it was often people who were already marginalized or already considered to be like closer to sin, which was women, foreign people, anyone who was remotely queer. It was already highly suspect. And yeah, it seemed like the spirit possession stories would always just kind of conveniently line up with, people that were already being marginalized, which of course I didn't pick up on that at the time, but it wasn't until later that kind of became more apparent, which, to your point, was important later when I went off into the world and thought, oh, maybe I'll go study anthropology now. It's kind of the opposite view of, trying to embrace and understand diversity rather than assume that that's where Satan comes from, which, it is not.
So what would be the origins of beliefs in spirits and demons across different cultures? Where does this come from in humans?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So it turns out that Christianity did not invent the concept of demons and evil spirits. We're all shocked, I know. In fact, that's probably one of the oldest features of religious or superstitious belief that may have sort of sprung up in early religious beliefs. And you find it, throughout the world. So, for example, beliefs in spirits, not even necessarily evil ones, is pretty widespread. And some anthropologists have even argued that it could be connected to the development of some of the earliest forms of religion as people kind of tried to construct narratives and stories around what might happen to people they know after they die. And it's kind of based in this concept that a lot of cultures have, that there's sort of a separation between your physical body and your mind, or what some people will call spirit, which to me is a very poorly defined concept. But so a lot of religions have this belief in spirits, especially a popular one is a belief in ancestral spirits, like the idea that, your ancestors may continue to have influence over your life. This is real popular in cultures that place a great deal of importance on lineage and descent. A lot in East Asia, like Chinese traditions, where there may be even a sense of responsibility to do certain things for your ancestors after they are deceased. And things like that. So that's one sort of way spirits, have been important in belief systems and cultures, but those aren't necessarily evil spirits, but they, can be. Another place that we see this is in one of the earliest religious forms, which can be described as animism. It's kind of just this idea that it's based on this belief that spirits can inhabit people or other animals, or even objects or things in the world, like a tree or a rock or a place or something like that. And it's been arguably a lot more common in cultures where people see themselves as connected with and a part of nature, as opposed to separate from and superior to it, as we see in kind of the biblical description of, Adam being given dominion over the earth and placed in charge of it. So that's a slightly different version of a belief in spirits than what we get in the Christian tradition. But obviously these beliefs are prevalent, kind of throughout the world. Something that I loved about getting to travel and learn about different belief systems, and also something that helped me become less fearful of this whole demon trope that I was still hanging on to even after leaving religion, just because it was such a big part of the indoctrination, was learning about, the different kinds of traditions and spirit and demon beliefs in different places in the world that were not as terrifying as the ones that we grew up with. I really enjoyed learning about Japanese folklore and mythology while I was living there. And they have this concept of kami, which are like little spirits that might, inhabit different places in the world, and you see them in like anime films, like the Hayao Miyazaki films, like My Neighbor Totoro. They're real cute little forest creatures, and they're all friendly and nice. And these are, very much better than the spirits that I was used to growing up with. And I thought, oh, well, this is okay. This is not scary. This is just mythology and folklore. People aren't taking this that seriously. This is a common belief across cultures, and it's not really scary. There was also, okay, this is fun. Remember last time I was talking to y'all about religion? I don't know. And I mentioned going to the fertility festival in Kawasaki that's held every year, where they have the big parade where people have the like giant penis floats that they're walking down the streets with at the shrine and everything. So also at that festival, another interesting myth that I learned about, it's actually from the indigenous Ainu, who are the indigenous residents of Japan. This is actually a fairly common myth. The one in Japan has certain elements to it. It's the vagina dentata myth, which for anybody that's not aware, is this idea of a woman who has teeth inside of her body that will castrate any man that she has sex with. It bites them. And in this
I've seen
myth,
that movie.
yes,
I've seen that movie.
yes, teeth, right?
Yeah.
I saw that recently for the first time, and oh my goodness, yeah, it puts that in a sort of US based purity culture context, but it's that same myth. It's common across a bunch of cultures. The one in Japan, it's actually a demon that's inside with the teeth that they have to get out, in order for the woman to be able to have safe, intimate relations with anyone else.
Wow.
Oh yeah, it's yeah. So there's a lot of different kinds of interesting spirits and demons in other mythology around the world that's I found a lot more interesting to learn about than the ones we got in Sunday school. And actually seeing that and the diversity of it, and the way that is obviously a metaphor, right? No one's taking that seriously. It's intended to be metaphorical. It's folklore that really kind of defanged the spirits and demons. Get it? Haha.
Literally. So there's a difference in the types of fears and spirits that people have in different cultures. Basically, it's a reflection of our culture. How does that tie in with anthropology? You know what I mean?
Yes.
How does that tie into us as humans as we develop?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that, yeah, it's exactly as you said. The mythology and the stories are going to reflect, what are the important themes in that culture right now? What is it that, we're wanting to teach people about? Is there a moral to the story? And, of course, going back to the ones that we learned about in my school and in my church, it seems like the moral of the story was always something along the lines of, you're sinful, you're bad, and you are always in danger. Satan can get you at any time. We actually had in my, I think I was in the 5th grade in my church school that I went to, one of the teachers went so far as to say that you could even get possessed by a demon in your sleep if you had a dream about it where Satan attacks you.
Wow.
Yeah. And she was like, if you don't call out to Jesus to save you, or if you do, but you don't have enough faith and Jesus doesn't save you in your dream, you can get possessed and taken by Satan and you will die in real life and go to hell. Like, she told that to 10-year-olds.
Wow.
So it's like, you're never safe, right? Even it's like, I'm thinking to myself, I'm not in charge of what happens to me when I'm asleep. This doesn't really seem fair.
Now, isn't that victim blaming? Yet again, it is the fault of the person, in this case, a young developing child. Mm-hmm. This is victim blaming. It's similar to my culture coming from the JWs. If we felt that there was some demonic activity or something happening, you had to call out Jehovah's name, and therefore putting the responsibility that if you were absolutely riddled with fear and couldn't call out the name, well, it's your own fault. It's your fault you got attacked by the demons. I mean, that parallels a lot of toxicity that religion talks about.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the part. I mean, you bring up a really good point that they scare you so badly. And, one of the very common responses to fear is to freeze. And now this is somehow your fault that you froze because they terrified you. And now, I guess, does Jehovah not know that, that's a common fear response?
Yeah.
Or he just blames you anyway?
I actually was watching a YouTube video, and it was an atheist YouTuber showing a video from a longer theist, a Christian YouTuber, and the guest on the Christian YouTuber was a priest, and they were talking about the subject of demonic possession. And I remember something that the priest said, and then when I was listening to it, I said, wow, that's something. And then the atheist YouTuber pointed it out too. And basically the priest was saying, it says in the Bible that Satan has such power over mortal beings that he can make you see things that aren't there and make you remember things that never happened. And then what kind of thing is that for God to put mortals against, to let a being like that can screw with your mind and make you believe or see anything, and yet it's our fault if we fall for whatever he said. And my thing is, well, then Satan could have written the Bible, and like we would have no way of knowing that didn't happen.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, if they can deceive us that well,
right?
How do we know that the things that are supposed to be the Holy Spirit are not actually the demonic spirits? Yeah.
And when you think about it, what other book of fiction has the hero being the one who kills the most people in the book? Right? Drown the whole planet except for a boatload of animals and one family, right off the bat, right?
Yeah.
Like it's in Star Wars, the Star Destroyer destroying Princess Leia's planet. I mean, like, would you say, oh, great, I love the Empire?
No, but maybe they were doing the right thing, because everyone on that planet was wicked and evil in their hearts.
Even the babies.
They were
That's
evil.
right.
Even the babies,
All the
and the
babies were
animals.
evil.
All of the animals too.
Yeah.
Stop using logical thinking, Rob. We've warned you about that.
Yeah, man, that's how the demons get in. Don't you know that?
Yes.
It was always that. But no. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, you're talking about the differences of how fear of different sorts of demons and so on have developed with different cultures. And what about in pop culture, the representations of demons and spirits? How does that affect us now, and how has that changed over time as humans have developed and society has developed?
Yeah. That's a great question. And if I had done a PowerPoint, I would have included some pictures of this, but I didn't want to trigger anybody, because in case demons are still scary to anyone, I didn't want to show a bunch of scary photos. Well, not photos, but drawings. I don't think we have any.
Wait, you have real photos of demons? I just heard that.
Just like the one behind you, Rob.
Yeah. Wait, what's behind you? No, not photos, but I'm thinking back even in like the Christian tradition. In my hometown of Fort Worth, there is one of the earliest, I think it might actually be the earliest known works by Michelangelo, called The Torment or the Temptation of Saint Anthony. And it's a painting of Saint Anthony and all of these, demons surrounding him. And they look like these kind of like just weird looking animal creature things that are like clawing at him or pulling on him. They don't look anything like, for example, Rob's picture of, a person possessed by a demon. So that, has obviously morphed a lot over time, and then sometime after that, we got the, the devil with the pitchfork and the red horns and the tail. And, we've kind of gone on from that to the more like Hollywood version of the demons, right? That they're able to do all the special effects with and make people's heads spin around and disappear and reappear and everything like that. And that was the thing that, we were always scared with. Whatever the pop culture version of demons was, that was what would be used to scare kids when I was, in the church, which is kind of interesting given that isn't necessarily the original depiction of demons. And if you're reading the Bible, there really aren't a lot of descriptions of demons very much, other than, there's a lot of occasions of, Jesus driving the demons out of the herd of pigs, or the person coming and talking to Jesus who is obviously possessed by a demon because they speak in a voice that sounds like it's multiple voices, or they're having a fit that sounds a lot like epilepsy if you read it these days. But as far as like what demons look like, I don't remember actually anything in the Bible about that. I'm not a Bible scholar, so I could be wrong.
No.
But
You make a very valid
if
point.
the Quran deals with that, because there's also demons in Islam. I don't know.
Yeah, with like the jinn, it's kind of the Muslim version. Yeah.
Evil genies.
Yeah.
It
Which is
reflects
weird.
the culture of the society that wrote the books. That's right.
Exactly. Which the more you kind of realize that, the less, the harder it is to believe that they're literally real because
Well,
it changes in each story.
yeah, you make a good point too. And I think about the traditional ghost stories that we grew up with. They were usually people that looked like they were in 18th century garb. They were women in cotton clothing that was popular really around the time of colonial invasion of the nation. It's that we didn't have ghost stories here that came from our earliest First Nations people. We only had the ones that came across with the white society, and it's a reflection of that. Or those who grew up in a Japanese culture only had ghosts or demons that reflected their culture, or wherever it might be in the world. Is that something you've noticed with your studies?
Yeah, isn't it interesting that the demons don't just terrorize everybody? Like they stick to their regions.
Maybe they can't travel because they can't get on airplanes and boats. So
that must be it.
Yeah.
I mean, I would expect that they should be able to like possess the airplane pilot or something and get there, but it seems that they're not able to for some reason. I don't know.
Helen put something interesting in the chat regarding where they come from in Christianity, come from medieval art and Dante's Inferno. You know anything about that?
Yes, and that is something that's really interesting to me. I have not actually read Dante's Inferno in its entirety, but yeah, that is, to my knowledge, one of the main sources of where we get our kind of hell and demonic mythology. And people somehow, they end up thinking that that's from the Bible. Like a lot of our imagery of, what it's going to be like in hell, and, people are in there burning to death, and you've got these different layers, and here's the types of tortures that will be happening to everyone. None of that is actually in the Bible. It's all things that came later through, literature, through like the artistic depictions. And I think because most people have not read the entire Bible, which I understand, it's a long bunch of books that's kind of unpleasant to get through, but people don't realize that much of what we think the Bible teaches about hell and demons and everything else isn't even from the Bible. It's tradition that got added later, years later, and has morphed and changed over time. And then you've got different denominations that have different versions of it. Like the Catholic Church has a whole different protocol for exorcisms and everything like that than what they would have had at the Pentecostal church where I went. We didn't have holy water or anything like that, which is kind of interesting. Seems like it shouldn't work correctly if you're not doing it right. But everyone seems to have kind of a different version. And of course, none of it is, or much of it is not strictly biblical in the first place. Yeah, it came to us later. And
so how much do you know about the current doctrine of the Catholic Church regarding this? Because I never heard much about it I went to 12 years of Catholic school. We never talked about it once. But I've seen news stories recently where there is still some office of exorcisms, and priests are trained to do this.
I have heard that. I didn't grow up in the Catholic Church either, so I don't really have any knowledge of that. Have you looked into it at all after you found that out?
Just a little bit more than that. I know is that they feel they've made progress and they're progressive in this area because, well, the stupid priests in the past just assumed every kind of weird thing was a demonic possession. But now they send a psychiatrist in first and a psychologist. And if they can't make a diagnosis, if they're not sure what's going on, then it's demonic possession. And they send in an exorcist.
So I'm understanding then that nothing has changed. If they can't understand the medical reason for it, it's a demon.
Well, in this case, it's the demon of the gaps instead of the God of the gaps, right? We know more about the universe, and therefore you can't point at so many things and say God anymore, but there's always going to be things you can. Those are the gaps. Same thing in medical science. We don't understand everything about the brain. Before, they didn't understand anything, right? And so everything was a demon. And now it's the Catholic Church has admitted, well, mostly we were wrong before, but there still are these things we don't know, and therefore demons.
Therefore demons, yeah.
And that's an interesting point too, the fact that as humans, we want to fix everything. So you talk about the Catholic Church, for instance, having holy water, and that's designed to fix the demon problem, or evangelicals employing some form of exorcism to fix the demon, or the JWs, were, if they felt an item was possessed, they would dig a hole in the backyard and bury it because that would fix the demon problem. So you've got all these things that humans are doing, which again, how does that tie in with the fact that the demons are supposed to have power far superior to anything that humans can muster? How is it that the holy water, the exorcism, the burying of the item can overcome the demons? Do they just give up? And
yeah, that's the part that was always unclear to me too. Like, can't the demon just, jump out of the way of the holy water, or, dig out of the hole? And it's also interesting too when, they would describe, I knew someone, I don't know what their role was, but they a few times would come and talk to us about exorcisms and say, it could take hours, and, it might go on for a really long time. And during this time, the demon may be, trying to scare you and startle you with, telling you things about yourself or your sins and blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, well, okay, it sounds like the exorcism doesn't work. Like, either you say the incantation and perform the ritual, or bury the item, or throw the holy water. If it is going to work, it seems like it should work. Why would it be this long, protracted thing? Unless, of course, you're just going to keep saying that you're working on exorcising this demon until for some other reason the problem gets resolved. And then you can say, aha, it was due.
But I've been amazed at the number of callers to the helpline where this came up. It doesn't come up a lot, but when it comes up, it's they're always convinced because they have seen YouTube videos about exorcisms and possessions. So, like, what can you say about that to someone who says, I saw it on YouTube, it has to be real?
Yeah, first of all, I have seen a lot of things on YouTube that I do not think are. I had someone, convinced that this video on YouTube was showing and someone being abducted by aliens and having a similar experience. And, it appeared to me that, this was obviously, a film that, someone had constructed with actors and special effects and everything. I mean, it's a film on the internet. It's no different than a TV show or a movie, which, will often depict people being possessed by demons. But I don't want to dismiss that out of hand, though, because that was one of the things that really had me convinced for a while, not YouTube videos, but people coming and telling stories of doing exorcisms, because I had never seen a demon. I had never seen someone being possessed, which was a little weird considering how easy it was supposed to be to get a demon. And I went to school with a lot of kids that did not follow the rules. So I don't know how any of them didn't get a demon, based on how easy you could, touch a Ouija board or, think a bad thought and get a demon, but they never seemed to. But the only way that we would know that they were really real is, people who were authorities in the church would come and describe these very terrifying experiences. They would never come in and just say, oh, yes, we did an exorcism. Everything is fine now. They'd give you all the details. Like, I remember one time they were talking about, they had done one in the sanctuary, and it was one of those real elaborate sanctuaries at this church. And they had these, like plants and fake like trees and these like styrofoam rock things along the front of the stage, where they would do their skits and the preaching and everything. And they were talking about how the person who was possessed, which was a girl, obviously, why would it not be, that they were trying to do the exorcism on was, going crazy, and at one point like picked up one of the styrofoam rocks and was like acting like she was going to throw it at them, and one of the people at the exorcism didn't realize that these were made out of styrofoam and was like, oh my goodness, the spirit has given her superhuman strength and she's throwing boulders, and it turns out it was styrofoam. But it was always this big elaborate thing, and they would scare you, and they would say things like, well, don't ever be involved in an exorcism because the demon will try to scare you away by tempting you or telling you, publicly humiliating you about your sins that you don't want anybody to know about. And it was all very scary. And it would come from someone that you believed to be giving you true information. Right. And they're giving you this firsthand account. So you're thinking, well, it must be true. This person doesn't lie to me. I mean,
isn't that called appeal to authority or
yes.
What's the other logical
appeal to anecdotal evidence?
Thank you.
Both.
Yeah.
Yes. So that was one of the things that had me convinced for a long time too, because I was thinking, well, people, I haven't seen these, but people that I trust have. So I guess this must be a real thing. And it's so terrifying. I don't want to not take it seriously and then get one. But you know, it is always based around these scare tactics. And yeah, you never do see one in person, do you? Okay, there was one time I was in the grocery store with a family member. This was during the time when we were still religious, and we were walking down the aisle to buy something. I don't know, we were at Walmart. And these two, like, maybe they were like late teens, early 20s age people walked past us. And one of them had contacts, you know, like those costume contacts you can get where it makes it look like your eyes are a different color, or like you have cat eyes or something like that. They had these like cat eye contacts in. It was obviously contacts. They walked past us, and my family member was like, Kara, it's a demon. There's demons in here.
Oh,
That's all it took.
That's all it took. Yeah, was, you know, costume contacts.
So there, that's a failure of using Occam's razor right there, right?
Mhm.
We know there are contact lenses. We know there are cosmetic contact lenses that can change your eye color, but it's demons.
But doesn't that highlight the
Yeah.
predisposition that when you're already weighting the scales so heavily toward the fear, and I guess like we've made a lot of jokes throughout this presentation and laughed at a lot of things, but the reality to acknowledge, there are a lot of people who are genuinely saddled with this fear and genuinely believe this, and we want to be able to be sympathetic and understanding toward them as well.
Oh yeah, like I retained this fear even after I didn't believe in the religion anymore. It's not like well, how should I say it? I didn't really believe in demons anymore either, but like I was still so afraid. Like the fear response was still, you know, such a habit that was ingrained that I couldn't watch horror films until, I mean, honestly, fairly recently. And especially if it had anything to do with a demon, I couldn't do it. It was going to be too scary. It's not like I actually thought the demon was going to get me, but it was just too much. It would bring back all of the fear, you know, that you learned as a child. And even though you intellectually aren't believing it, the fear response, the emotional response would still happen. And it wasn't until I kind of went through some of the things I described and a few other experiences that we'll talk about later, that I actually got to the point to where it wasn't scary anymore. But it was almost like, to me, like a process of any other kind of phobia, like where you have to sort of gradually desensitize yourself. I did start watching horror movies sometimes, and, you know, I even donated money to the Satanic Temple for one of their bodily autonomy charitable events, and, you know, little bits and pieces of things. I had a tarot reading, not because I thought that it was going to tell me anything real, but I was just curious about the process, and it was, you know, it was in
the
my
power back from those fears. You took control back.
Exactly. Yeah, so that helped me a lot, but it was really scary doing those little individual things right at first, not because I thought something bad was going to happen, but just you have the fear response and then you do it and then you realize, okay, well, nothing bad happened actually. The demon didn't get me. I'm still not possessed. And
so that a few people have asked questions similar along that, and I'm not sure if it throws off the theme of your talk, but are there specific ways, along with, you know, that method of saturating ourselves into those practices to try and take their power away, what else would you suggest would help people in getting rid of that?
Yeah, that is a great question. And yeah, we do have some resources. I think Rob actually just posted a link to some of our resources in the chat.
I went to our resource page and I looked up exorcism, demons, and Satan. So there's
excellent. Thank you. Yeah, I know one of our resources that we have is the one I was mentioning earlier that Holy Kool-Aid did specifically about sleep paralysis.
Yeah, that's in there. I did see that when you click one of those links. It's in there.
Yeah, I really like that one. I had a friend growing up that had a few instances of sleep paralysis, and although I didn't experience it, just, you know, hearing her describe it was just absolutely terrifying. And if you're experiencing something like that, which is basically where you're still asleep, but you wake up, but your brain hasn't basically all the way woken up and your body is still paralyzed for a little while as you're waking up. So there's this period where you realize that you're waking up, but you're kind of still dreaming too. So people will feel like they can't move and they might be having hallucinations or seeing things. And for a lot of people, it ends up being, something terrifying, which could be a demon or a spirit or something, if that's what your brain is going to conjure up. So anyway, I had a friend that had that experience, and it was, she was terrified. She couldn't sleep in her room alone for a while after that. It was such a traumatic experience. But then in the video, he kind of goes over how that has been one of the things that people have historically attributed to, oh, it must be a demon, that you're seeing a demon. But in fact, we have now realized, no, actually, that's just a fairly common medical issue that can happen to people, and we know what's causing it, and it's nothing to do with demons. And there's things you can do to try and help it get better. And so he talks about his experience with that in that video, and I thought that was a really good example of kind of what we were talking about earlier, Rob, where we realized, okay, there were a lot of things that we used to not know how they happened, and we were calling that demons. Turns out we know how that happens now.
Right.
And there are a lot of other things like that too. In fact, I think most of the situations that people will claim are a demon in a lot of cases are, something that might be connected to a medical issue. Like, we know that people have used that narrative to describe things like epilepsy, or people having various kind of mental health situations like schizophrenia or some sort of psychosis or sleep deprivation, or there's a whole host of things that can cause people to behave in ways that, for whatever reason, people have identified as, it must be a demon, but we in fact know exactly why that situation was happening. And in fact, it really helped me personally to see that firsthand. In my previous job, I used to work in law enforcement, and funny thing is, sometimes when people think that they are witnessing a demonic possession, rather than calling a priest, they call the police. So I got to go witness quite a few demonic events that it turns out are nothing like what the Hollywood version is or what they scared you with in Sunday school. It's usually, either sad or comical.
I can't imagine this. Call to a 911 operator. What is it? We have a possession going on. We need an exit. Like, what?
Oh,
Seriously?
Yeah. People will call the police about literally anything, it turns out. But yeah, and people would sometimes also call themselves if they were having a psychotic episode or a mental health disturbance.
What do you mean?
Like they would, the police, I need the police, I'm Jesus and I'm having an argument with Satan on the street corner over whose shoes these are. And we need this to be adjudicated. I had a couple of times where someone who claimed to be possessed put a curse on me. And, the first time that happened, it actually kind of freaked me out, even though I could see, okay, this is a mental health issue. But I had this like fear reaction in the back of my head where I was like,
do you remember what it was that they cursed you with?
I don't remember the exact words, but it was something along the lines of what was supposed to happen was before midnight that night, I was going to be visited by Satan and he was going to murder me or something.
Oh, man.
Well, you are atheist
short-term
now,
thing, right?
so
You just had to survive the evening.
I just had to survive that night.
Right.
But I was sitting there at midnight going, okay, I know this was fake, but I'm going to feel better at 12:01.
Now, what if they had done sometime in the next year? You will be visited by,
I know they should have done that. That would have been more strategic. I would have been freaked out about it for, at least a few weeks until
it wasn't a very
about
bright curse.
It wasn't. These demons are not really with it. Like, they need to get their strategy sorted out. I actually did an exorcism for someone one time. And yeah, and I do not recommend this. This is not good behavior. But there was a woman who was convinced that her apartment was haunted by a demon. And she had packed up all of her kids and their belongings in her car and was in the parking lot. And she was like, I cannot go back in. I don't have any place to go, but we can't go back into the apartment because it has a demon. And there was no convincing her otherwise. And I was asking, okay, well, what happened that made you think there's a demon? And I'm thinking it's going to be something really spectacularly scary. Yes. She was saying, well, the gas stove came on by itself. And then I was in another part of the house and I felt a draft. And I have this feeling that there's a presence in here with us. And I was like, okay, but this is an extremely old building, and other people have, the stoves are not good. These are drafty buildings. This was a building that was built in like the 1930s. I was like, don't you think it could just be that it's drafty and your stove is malfunctioning? No, it's a demon. I've seen The Exorcist. And it's like she's getting this, belief informed by, what she saw on a scary movie or something. And she's just convinced that it's that. So I actually ended up doing a fake exorcism in her apartment for her.
Just to make her feel better.
Just to make her feel better, which is
And
probably
did she then
not the right
stay?
thing.
But did it
I
calm her
don't know that
nerves?
it really helped. It calmed her
Okay.
down some, but I don't know that she actually decided to move back in. But I did go in and reassure her that I searched and did not find any demons. And I did a whole, the power of Christ compels you, and
Wow.
sprinkled my water bottle.
Wow.
Wow.
Were you able to
So-
charge for that?
No, unfortunately.
The Lord gives
but if
free,
anyone
Rob.
would like to order an exorcism, I cannot promise that it will do anything.
Oh, you
That
make a
story
good point.
reminds
though.
me of like Kenny Biddle's story about him investigating with, I don't remember if it was on his talk for RfRx or
Yes.
one of the other things listed, but you go into a house and someone is convinced it's a ghost because things are making noise, because that's how they're primed. It's in their head.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah, it's exactly that. I mean, you could have attributed those things that she said to almost anything, and yet she was primed to think it was a ghost or a demon in this case.
What's the line between, let's say, ghost, poltergeist, and demon?
Ooh, good question. So in the tradition I grew up in, and this is not the same for everybody, and the one I grew up in, we did not believe in ghosts. And the reason for that was that ghosts are supposed to be the spirits of humans. And in the evangelical faith, humans after you die either go to heaven or hell. So there's not any reason that you
You're not
wouldn't be
hanging
in either
around.
one of those places.
You're not hanging around.
Yeah, you're not going to be there. So there's not going to be a ghost. So if you have something that could be a ghost, it's probably a demon.
And a poltergeist is just, I don't know, that literally is a noisy ghost. So I don't know where the line for that is.
I don't really know either. It's my only knowledge of that would also be from pop culture, like movies like Poltergeist, which
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want to, reinforce that. I don't know where that one comes from, like actually, originates as a concept. Maybe somebody in the chat does. But
Yes,
I
somebody's
do
put in
not.
the chat, that's just a ghost who won't STF you. Good comment.
It's a ghost that used to have a podcast when they were
Right.
alive.
Alex Jones, the ghost. So we've seen how people can be influenced by what they're already primed to believe and what they're already primed to think. We've talked about how we can combat that. But do you think we'll ever get a society that's completely free of these superstitious fears or leanings?
Ooh, I would love that. I kind of doubt it. It seems like, especially with the spirits beliefs, that's been one that has hung around with us for a long time. And it goes back to, this curiosity I think that people have about, well, what happens after you die? And we don't actually know. And so I think that mystery probably is appealing to people, to come up with these narratives and stories about, spirits and beings from the other side, just because there's, it's not very exciting to say, well, we don't know what happens after you die and it might be nothing. That doesn't make a very good movie at all. So I have a feeling that it will probably stick around. But I think, kind of like to Rob's point earlier, the more we do recognize the medical basis for a lot of the things that people tend to associate with demon possession, I think that will help. Like, we know that sleep paralysis is a thing now. We know epilepsy is a condition now. And in fact, there's a really good medical anthropology book called The Spirit Catches You and You Fall Down, that is about sort of this situation happening where it was sort of a clash between Western medicine and some of the traditional beliefs of immigrant family. I think they were Hmong, but they were from a South Asian country, I think, Southeast Asian. And the little girl in the family had epilepsy, and she started getting seizures, and they went to the doctor, but through various missteps and miscommunications on both sides, they were unable to really get clear communication with the doctors. And there were some cultural beliefs that the family held about spirits and how that might look a little bit like epilepsy. And they weren't really understanding what the doctors were telling them very much. And anyway, it's actually a very sad story. The girl ends up dying needlessly due to not receiving the right care, due to a lot of misunderstanding. And I think some of the critique is that the medical community wasn't able to recognize that they were dealing with some cultural beliefs, and they weren't addressing them or addressing those questions. And then there was, just a lack of communication and resources made available to people. It's a sad story, and it's kind of depressing. But the reason I was bringing that up is, it's one of those things where we have learned more about a lot of the things that people attribute to spirits and demonic possession, but that doesn't necessarily mean that people aren't still interested in those topics and won't still appeal to them, or, feel that they're, even if you can explain this condition with modern medicine, maybe there is still some appeal to the supernatural elements of the stories that still have some sway. So long story short, I don't think we're going to stop believing necessarily as a society in spirits and demons, but I am confident that you can stop being scared of them if you no longer believe in them. So there's that, at least through some of the resources that Rob already put in the chat. And like I mentioned, also, I'll look it up. I'll see if I can put it in the show notes. Seth Andrews had a really good talk about this as well, where he, invites a possession and does not become possessed and things like that. But bit by bit, even if it's just little small steps at a time, like, getting out your Halloween t-shirt and, wearing it and not being afraid that it's going to invite a demon, go for it and enjoy Halloween month and give yourself permission to enjoy it. A demon is not going to get you. That's
Excellent.
all I've got.
Brilliant. That's it. Awesome.
That's
Reclaim the time. Make it fun. Enjoy it. Thank you, Cara.
Reclaim Halloween.
Thank you. Fantastic presentation. Really, really
Oh.
good. And seeing lots of positive comments coming through in the chat from everybody who's really appreciating everything that you've shared today. Thank you. I'm sure that's only the tip of the iceberg of the topic that we could have covered.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, we need to get a demonologist on here and really.
So we have
Ooh,
some
deep dive.
interesting questions we collected, so we'll maybe
do.
bring out some more points.
Oh yeah.
You want to
let's
start,
do it.
Sasha?
No, you go for it. You've got them there.
Okay. So the first one we copied down was, is there a link to education helping people to shake off spirits? I guess they're asking for more than what we have in our resources.
Okay. Hopefully not to shake off actual spirits, or to shake off the fear of spirits.
Probably the fear, I would say. I think that was what
Okay.
came through. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of some others. I think the resources that you posted, Rob, from our resources list were really good ones.
Let me ask this. Do you think, as an extension to that, do you think it ever gets to the point where someone they may intellectually not believe it anymore, and they just can't get it, emotionally out of them because of religious trauma syndrome, that they need like professional help to deal with it?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think that I am not a mental health professional, so I can't actually comment on that with any degree of expertise, but that would make sense to me, that would be a thing that someone could see a professional about, just like any other fear. Like a phobia is something that you can see a mental health professional about, like spiders, for example. I think I mentioned earlier, maybe in the pre-show, I cannot even with spiders. I probably actually do need to see a professional about
and spiders are, as far as we know, real. They're not.
Yes. They seem to be
Supernatural
real.
entities which have some question about whether because there's no evidence. There's evidence for spiders.
How about demonic
and some of them are
possessed
poisonous,
spiders?
so maybe you're right, Cara. Especially if you go to Australia. If you go to Australia, right, Sasha?
Yeah, ours have got ghosts in them for sure.
I've heard about y'all's spiders down there. I do not want any part of that. You can keep them. No.
But you're right. So there's exposure therapy that can work for a lot of phobias. But when we're talking about stuff that's been religiously influenced, that might require a far more degree of expert assistance than anything that we could just give to ourselves.
Yeah, and it's easy to probably do some exposure therapy with spiders or things like that. I'm not going to, don't make me, but since there is no evidence that demons are real, but you might not be able to do exactly the same thing with it. But I mean, it does, to your point, sound like it's connected to religious trauma. And we certainly have some mental health professionals with the Secular Therapy Project that would probably be able to work with people on that. So if I had to give a link, I think that would be the one that I would suggest, actually. And let me pull it up here and I will drop it in the chat. Because I don't think that, and a few people have mentioned this in the chat too, I don't think it's something that people need to be embarrassed about, even though it can be embarrassing when you're like, I can't watch this children's movie because I'm terrified of demons. And there's kids in here, laughing and watching Poltergeist or something. And you're sitting here trembling. That can feel embarrassing. I get that. That was me for a while. But I don't think it's something that you need to be embarrassed about, because it's, just like the fear of hell or any of these other things, it's something that adults did to you as a child in many cases. You didn't choose to have that irrational fear. It was chosen for you.
Right.
So
Indoctrination is powerful, isn't it? Particularly when it cashes in on those fear responses in humans. There's that old expression that said, the only power things have over us is the power we allow them. That's a little simplistic when it comes to childhood indoctrination. It can hold a great deal of power, and we need help to get through that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they know, all the tips and tricks to make it stick with you and make it extra scary. So, it makes sense that it would take some professional help to get rid of it in some cases.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. We've got a couple more questions here. Another one that came through was, where did belief in demons come from in Christianity or the Bible?
Yeah. So my understanding of it is that in Christianity, if you're doing the biblical version, and I know a lot of times the beliefs are mixed up with the extra biblical sources, like we talked about with Dante's Inferno and medieval and Renaissance, art and everything. But my understanding of demons as they are described in the Bible is that they're fallen angels, kind of like Satan or Lucifer, and they're basically his minions. They don't have, full power over you, but they have, I guess, similar powers to the other angels in the Bible, but they have been ejected from heaven due to their rebellion, and they now are minions of Satan. And so their goal is to basically make people stumble or turn away from God and that kind of thing. So that's, and that, there are brief descriptions to that effect in the Bible about, the fallen angels that were ejected from heaven, when they initially rebelled against God. And then the other sources that I'm thinking of in the Bible are in the New Testament, where Jesus is casting out demons. And the demons aren't really characterized that much in most of those. It's mainly, it's part of the descriptions of Jesus's many miracles. And here he goes out and he's among the people, healing the sick and casting out the demons. And, it's not very descriptive about the demons themselves. But that's my understanding of demons in the Bible. The rest of it is just stuff they scare kids with.
No, that's interesting. Amazing how with the increase in medical diagnosis, technology, therapy, greater education, that we don't have the reports of people being possessed by demons in our streets, as we seem to happen in every part of the Bible cities that they spoke about.
Yes, it's interesting that they were just all over the place, and people were just bringing, this one has the demon that makes them have seizures. Now we just take people to the hospital.
What was this thing about you said before about demons and pigs? I'm not familiar.
Oh yeah, it was that one story where let me see if I'm getting it right. It's from the New Testament, and it may be in Acts, but I could be making that up. I'm probably making that up. But Jesus is out among the crowds doing his teaching and his miracles, and he comes upon someone who is possessed by a demon, and the demons are pleading with him, no, don't cast us out. That would be awful. And he says, oh, all right, fine. I won't cast you out completely. I will just cast you into this herd of pigs over here.
Oh,
And
poor
so,
pigs.
yeah, because then the demons go into the pigs and all the pigs run off the cliff and die.
Oh,
Yeah,
But
it's a very...
do you know how that was justified to us?
No,
Jews
how?
shouldn't have had pigs to begin with. So because they were an unclean animal, according to Jewish law, the person herding the pigs was already being sinful. Therefore, it was a natural place for Jesus to
now
cast
it all
the demon.
makes sense.
And that's that whole old expression, as someone put in the chat, Rob, that you've heard of, where the demons called out saying, we are legion, there are many of us. And they
Oh, I haven't heard that.
Yeah.
Cast into the pigs, and the pigs throw themselves off the cliff.
And the pigs were not considered in this justification that you got either. It sounds like the person herding the pigs was sinning, but the pigs just, I guess they didn't matter.
Well, they were unclean by virtue of being unclean. Yeah.
Wow.
It's problematic on so many levels, right?
Yes, it is.
So another question from the chat: are certain demographics more likely to claim possession? I think you mentioned women.
I think that, well, we tend to have in some circles, I think it's more often that sometimes they'll be accused of being possessed, but also I think we had in another talk, and I've read in, I believe it was one of the Pew research reports, that we have a slightly higher proportions of women tend to be heavily involved in religiosity. So that would not surprise me if that was the case. But yeah, I do think that, typically when we're talking about people asserting that someone is possessed by a demon, it often lines up with, people who are already kind of marginalized or on the outsides of the power structure in a lot of cases. But then at the same time, it's, it can just be associated with, medical conditions or mental health issues. So if someone has some condition like that, they could be vulnerable to someone in their family or they themselves thinking, rather than going to the hospital, that, oh, I wonder if this is a demon, because it matches up with our popular culture representations or our descriptions from the New Testament of the kinds of symptoms you might have if you have a demon. So unfortunately, yeah, I think people who have, certain conditions, schizophrenia, epilepsy, things like that, they are going to be vulnerable to people suggesting that it's that rather than getting good medical help, unfortunately.
So another question that kind of ties in a little bit, and we talk about people's predisposition to think a certain way. I wonder if there's ever been any studies done from your knowledge of those claiming to be affected by ghosts or demons who were never raised in a religious environment to begin with, maybe an atheist family generation back. Is there a correlation, or do we ever hear of people who were lifelong atheists still claiming to have seen a ghost or felt a demon possession?
I don't know. I would expect that normally people would be drawing on what they grew up with. It wouldn't surprise me if someone maybe grew up in a certain belief system and then stopped being a believer, but then some incident or crisis happened later and some of that imagery came back up for them. That wouldn't surprise me, but I don't actually know any of the studies or the numbers on that. I'm not really familiar because, unfortunately, a lot of the times with, people who think that they are possessed by a demon, in a lot of cases, it is a mental health issue. And so that person is maybe having like a psychotic episode or something like that. I actually, took a lot of people to the mental health center at the hospital, in my professional capacity, who, were claiming to be Jesus or Satan or possessed. And I actually met one lady who could do the voice thing where like she would do this like really hoarse sounding voice where it did kind of sound like two voices at once, but I mean, then she's in this voice, arguing with her imaginary friend about who ate the chicken wings. And, it's very sad. And it's also like, silly enough that when you're there, it's not even scary. You're like, okay, this is a person who's, having this imagery, in their head. This is obviously manifesting as part of this mental health issue, but it doesn't appear really like a demon to anyone who's observing it, I think, unless you're very much primed for it. And so, yeah, I think a lot of the people who might say that they're possessed, it's, we're hearing a mental health crisis is happening in those cases. And so it's not like they're being dishonest or anything like that. It's, I think for some people, that's just the explanation that is easily conjured up for something if you grew up, being indoctrinated into it, and then something hard to explain occurs.
So sort of tangential, but how about these people who don't claim that they wouldn't say they're possessed, but they're being motivated to act because they hear demonic voices? So it's not from inside of them. And the thing that pops into my head is the Son of Sam, the serial killer from New York. It was called Son of Sam because something about Sam the dog's spirit lived in the wall or something, was talking to him. And so there were evil forces talking to him and telling him to do things. Doesn't quite sound like a possession, but damn close. Damn.
Yeah. I mean, again, I am not a mental health professional, but that sounds to me like something that I would consult with a mental health professional about to see if we could rule out, something going on there.
So Glenda says he claims Satan was talking through his dog. Okay. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this is I guess, why we're talking about these topics, so that there are real fears that this can inflict harm upon either the individual or society in general. When people hold beliefs that are so strong, it can have literally detrimental effects on people. So it's powerful to have this topic talked about.
Oh, yeah. And that's a great point, too. Yeah. Having this narrative of demon possession has probably stopped, I don't know how many people from actually getting medical treatment for something that is treatable. But instead, if you're going with the narrative of it's a demon and we're going to continue doing exorcisms or things like this, you're not going to be helping that person who's having an actual crisis that actually needs treatment. And yeah, it is very detrimental to be doing exorcisms on children or adults. If you're witnessing something that makes you think we should do an exorcism, I'm willing to bet that's something that you should consult with a doctor about first.
Right. And I know we've come a long way in society from the 70s and 80s, where satanic panic infiltrated even our law enforcement and our medical profession, where there were even law enforcement people employing so-called, was it ghost hunters or demon? You might be able to shed more light on that, Kara?
That would have been a little before my time. I am not aware of any of that going on currently. But no, to your point, during that satanic panic, I mean, people were arrested and prosecuted for these claims that they were involved in these satanic cults and rituals and everything like that, it turns out was completely false. So yes, there was, at the very least, some law enforcement involvement in that. And that is, in my opinion, a failure of education and training, on everyone's part. I don't think that's happened. I think there's a lot more awareness of mental health issues, but that's actually, this is probably a topic for a whole nother show, but, law enforcement officers deal with a lot of things that ought to be handled by mental health professionals. And there needs to be a much better awareness and training around that, I think. So yeah, that is actually a really good point.
Yeah, somebody in the chat who I've actually talked to on the helpline said a doctor was one of those people who did an exorcism on me. So she's had several exorcisms, and yeah.
Well, that is very disturbing. Yeah, I am really sorry to hear that happened to someone. Yikes.
Well, so my wife worked for a doctor, psychiatrist, I believe, or psychologist, who, so just to say, a medical degree doesn't mean that you're all there. He believed he was literally the second coming. His license plate in his car said Yahweh. And he had a religious following who protested outside a courthouse when he was being prosecuted by the state of New Jersey for tax evasion. that they're saying this is religious persecution.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he used to just say, he
Didn't
used to just
Jesus
faith healing. He
say
did
to
faith
pay your
healing.
taxes?
You're right.
Jesus was clear on that. I
Yeah,
think he
yeah.
said you have to pay your
To
taxes.
Caesar, right? Yeah.
Well, I don't know how he could have been that, because we have the real Messiah living here in Australia, the
What?
second coming of Jesus, an ex-JW who's been on 60 Minutes, who claims that he's the real incarnation. So
Whoa.
one of them was lying.
Only one of them, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, somebody did ask a question of that. Are people who claim to be, some sort of supernatural being or possessed of a supernatural being, are they all lying? And we spoke about the things that can contribute toward people feeling that way. But any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, my thought would be in all of the cases where I have interacted with the person who was claiming to be possessed, it was a medical issue. And it not even necessarily like a mental health condition. I met someone one time who was having a really bad reaction to a medication that she had taken for something fairly routine. And for whatever reason, she had this reaction where she wasn't able to sleep while she was taking this medicine. And so she had such severe sleep deprivation that, she was experiencing like hallucinations type of things. And she had to go to the emergency room. And, it was all not medically induced, but induced by that kind of thing. And I think she really thought she was seeing what she was claiming to see. Now, are there people who could be lying? Yeah, I'm sure there are. It would not surprise me at all. But I think that there are a great many cases where the person is probably sincere about what they believe themselves to be experiencing, but there's just some other things going on. But I don't know. I guess you'd have to ask them.
Sort of a tangential question was asked. Is demonic possession ghost power? I don't know what that means. Simply people struggling with bad energy in their life.
I'm not really sure what is meant by bad energy.
Me neither.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I could comment on that.
Maybe just struggling with like bad life circumstances.
Yeah, well, I think that, one of the ways that we talk about, demons now in more, popular culture in a less literal sense is, to say that, someone struggling with their inner demons or their personal demons to just mean, some internal struggle or difficulty that they have, or, a negative thought or something. So I wonder if maybe that question is asking about that. I think that is sometimes a term that people might use, for just dealing with, whatever the situation is, maybe it's a depressed mood or something like that. I have certainly heard people use the term, demon to mean that, but I would separate that from, the belief in the actual physical demons that's, going to come attack you.
Right. No, that's a good point. It could just be the shit of life that has caught up with people and made life have a bad turn. It doesn't have to be attributed to anything. Maybe that gets into that human tendency to have to find a cause for everything that happens instead of just stuff happens.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot more comforting to think, this isn't my fault. This is a demonic attack. And, and if we pray about it, it may improve the circumstances when I can't think of anything else that I could do, physically to help. Yeah, I think that probably is related there.
We've got one last question that was coming, or there may be some more, but one that I thought was interesting because it kind of changed the spin. We're saying that demonic possession, ghost possession, all this is a bad thing. It causes negative things. Somebody asked a question saying, have we ever heard stories of a person having derived enjoyment or fulfillment from being possessed?
Okay, so this is a really interesting question that I love that someone asked that. It kind of goes back to this idea of being filled with the Holy Spirit, because to me, in some religious traditions, like the ones I grew up in, that feels very similar, or I should say that sounds very similar to me, to being possessed by a demon, but rather you are possessed by the Holy Spirit. And I think people certainly seek that out and consider it a good thing. But to me, that is almost equally terrifying because it kind of suggests that you're not in control of yourself, which I don't want to be possessed by a benign or malevolent spirit personally. But yeah, I think there are a lot of people that would consider, themselves to be filled with the Holy Spirit in some of these, like Pentecostal Assembly of God kind of traditions of Christianity, where they are seeking out that experience and trying to get more of the Holy Spirit inside of them. And I even went to school with people who would commonly engage in speaking in tongues, and this was a manifestation of being filled with the Holy Spirit. And they would sometimes like be speaking in tongues and like fall down on the floor and roll around, and they would have the pastor do the like slay you in the spirit thing, where they like put their hand on you and you fly backwards dramatically. And this was all, being filled with the Holy Spirit. And people, I think, found that quite enjoyable. It scared the bananas out of me, but some people liked it.
Wow. Well, I think we're going to end this segment there, but hang on, people. There's a lot more to go. So thank you very much. I didn't know much about this subject from the perspective of evangelical Christianity, because that was not my background. But it's scary shit. And thank you for sharing it all with us.
Sure thing.
So we're going to talk a little bit, inside baseball stuff here for a little bit, but then we're going to come back with open the microphones and have questions for Kara, assuming that they can hang around. Are you going to be able to do that? Okay, so if you didn't get your question asked, you will be able to ask Kara that shortly. But do you want to tell us what's coming up next week? Because I have no idea, Sasha.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. And thank you, Kara, for today's presentation too. It's fantastic. So next week, we're keeping it within the RfR family. Our fellow co-host, Rob Palmer, will actually be presenting for us next week. And the title of his discussion, or the theme of his discussion, is really interesting. We're looking forward to this. He's discussing psychic predictions. So that'll be a good one to stay tuned for. Give you a little bit of a bio just to set the scene for it. So in 2021, the Skeptic Zone producer and CSI fellow Richard Saunders completed his 12-year project dubbed the Great Australian Psychic Prediction Project, or GAP. And that was an analysis of almost 4,000 published paranormal predictions made by over 200 people who claimed that they had paranormal powers here in Australia. Well, that's interesting. I want to know more about this, being down here in Australia. So the scoring of the predictions was performed by an international team of volunteers, and Rob was one of those volunteers who worked very hard on this project. So he'll be able to share in his presentation an expanded version of the talk that, as he mentioned, he will deliver at CSICon in 2022 in a couple of weeks. So Rob will share details and the results of this study and this unique investigation into this topic of psychic power or psychic predictions. And really looking forward to that, Rob. So thank you very much for preparing that, and I encourage everybody to get along next week at the same time, and let other people know as well. Spread it on your social medias and tell people about the upcoming talks. And as we mentioned, of course, we've got all the previous talks as well that we want to look into. Rob, can you give us a little bit of an info on how we can find that?
Sure. Most of the previous RfRx recordings, 95 now, can be found on our YouTube channel. And here's a link for that in the chat. And so for people listening, you go to our main page, you hit RfRx videos up at top, and then that brings you to that page. And up at the very top of that, it says, see our YouTube playlist. So that's where you'll find them all. And even more than the 95 have been uploaded as audio podcast episodes. And that link is right at the top of our main page. It says podcast. You can send any questions or comments about this talk or any others to our email address, which is rfrx@recoveringfromreligion.org. And as I mentioned earlier, we have a blog and the podcast. So I'm going to put the links in the chat one last time for that.
Awesome.
And I hear we've got some social medias. So.
Yeah, we'd love to spread the word, and social media platforms that we've got going. We've got Instagram and TikTok, Facebook and Twitter, and you name it. So please follow the links. And if you feel that some of the content has been of benefit to yourself, share it on your platforms. Preach the word about the RfR gospel. If you like it, spread the message and let people know how we can be of help.
Amen. Preach the word.
Yeah. Praise, brother.
And you can sign up for our newsletter. This is at the bottom of our main page. It provides news about the organization, recently added resources, maybe recently published videos when that happens, and recently published blog posts.
Awesome, thank you. Now, we would also like to bring up the results of that poll that we had at the very beginning of our presentation. Do we have that available to bring up on the screen?
I can do that. Let's see. Here we go. Everyone see it?
Okay. Interesting. How do you rate those results, Cara? If you're
Ooh, that is very interesting.
So for people who can't see it, the first question, do you believe in the existence of demons or evil spirits? We had only a hair under 10% saying yes, huge majority with no, and some not sure. Were you ever taught that certain behaviors, thoughts, or objects could cause you to become possessed by a demon? I find that really interesting. 57% said yes. So 57% were taught that, but only 9% actually still believe in it. So that's interesting. So that's the majority there, and no was 41% with a few not sure. And has the fear of demons or evil spirits ever caused you to change your behavior or avoid certain things? The majority were yes on that, 55%. That's sad. And no was 41 and not sure 5.
wow,
Wow.
that is interesting.
Yeah, that actually surprises me. I didn't think as many people were going to say yes to questions 2 or especially 3. I feel a little bit validated in knowing
Seems
that there are
very,
other
very-
people out there like me that
Very
also
pervasive,
experienced
very
this.
pervasive in the community.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
also sad to hear that so many people did deal with that, and it did, cause them to alter their behaviors or avoid things. But I'm glad that, we found that out, because I think it's not a topic that we discuss all that often. And it sounds like, from these results, that it is something that a lot of people experienced, and it was obviously a very negative one. So I appreciate people feeling that out and letting us know that they had that experience too.
Good idea to talk about this.
Yeah. And we will be talking more about this kind of thing again on our Halloween episode. David Teachout, who is a mental health professional, is going to talk with us about dealing with fear. So that might be another good time if you want to keep thinking about this to come back with questions then too.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. No, that's great. And thank you to all who filled that poll in. We also have a feedback poll just for how we found today's presentation. We'll launch that, and feel free to put your responses in there as well. And while we do that, so we'll close this other poll and we'll launch that other one. While we do that, we'd like to introduce our founder, our chairman, Dr. Darrel Ray, who would like to give us a few concluding comments about today's presentation and have a chat to us about all things RfR. Are you available to chat to us, Dr. Darrel?
I am here, and thank you, Kara, for this. I confess that years ago I had the same thing. I had this whole I had some fear of that kind of stuff. And I learned to challenge this on a regular basis. So whenever I would find myself saying, oh, I don't want to walk under a ladder, I would walk under the ladder just for the hell of it, of course. And I even picked my phone number. If you've ever seen my phone number, Kara, it ends in 666. And that is intentional. I had actually turned out to be quite a good thing. It helped me. It became a dating screening mechanism. I once had a woman decide she didn't want to go out on a first date with me because I had a phone number that ended 666. Turns out she was a fundamentalist Baptist, so I shouldn't have been trying to date her anyway. But anyway, so there is some functionality here, if you use this stuff the opposite way it was intended. But I agree with you, Sasha, that so much of this comes from childhood indoctrination. Most of the people who carry these fears into adulthood, they're fears that come directly out of their culture. And it's the culture they were indoctrinated when they were 5 or 6 years old. And I think Kara's hinted at this several times tonight. I love cross-cultural understanding of supernatural ideas, because people who are scared of one kind of possession or demon or ghosts or any of that sort of stuff, they're scared of the Western kind. They're not scared of the Central South American tribal kind. There's dramatic differences between cultures and how these things are acted out and used. And not all of them are malevolent. In North American, Native American culture, there were lots of beliefs about spirits that would come and help you through your life. In fact, your name oftentimes was that spirit, or that's, you would have that animal or that spirit would come into you and protect you or help you hunt better or whatever. So there's positive possession in some cultures. And if you just read some of the rituals that North American Native Americans use, you'll find a lot of evidence for positive possession of course, the missionaries that came here thought they were being possessed of demons, but that's not the way that they saw it. But anyway, I thought that was that little, I just wanted to highlight that, Kara, that cross-cultural stuff can almost be diametrically opposed to what people feel or experience. And another thing I want to throw out here, because several times we've heard people say, "Oh, I'm not a mental health professional." I was a mental health professional, still am, but what we see in this kind of stuff is a programming of the limbic system, which is flight, fight, and freeze. And David may talk about this on the Halloween episode, but if you are experiencing these kinds of fears, if you're afraid to walk under a ladder, if you're afraid your whole day is going to go bad because you broke a mirror, or 7 years of bad luck, or any of this kind of stuff, or or you might get possessed by a demon or something, your limbic system has been programmed, probably at a very early age, probably by some kind of abusive behavior from your environment. And it's a good thing to go find a therapist that can help you. And of course, Psychotherapy Project would be one place to start. I was a psychologist in a mental health institution many years ago. This is kind of tangential, but we had chaplains and ministers that would come in to visit from the churches where our patient was from. We absolutely dreaded it when a minister from a fundamentalist church would come in, because they could upset weeks and weeks of work we would do to help somebody who had schizophrenia or some other mental health issue, because they would come in and say, "Well, you need to pray harder to Jesus to get over your problem so you can get out of this hospital." And that would set that person back for weeks. It would take us forever. And sometimes we could successfully get the parents or somebody else to stop that minister from coming in, but we couldn't always. It really, really would set back people. Anyway, that's just another angle that I've experienced in my career. Anyway, thanks so much, Kara. This has been really interesting and fun, and I think a lot of people were into that from what I could tell on the chat.